that training. In this training, we went through quite a number of areas that we think were important towards ensuring that this new executive can function well. In fact, you may notice that this is the first executive in the history of the THA where there isn't a single member of the executive that was ever part of a previous executive. And while that has its obvious advantages, one of the things I wanted to be sure of is that coming into this calendar year, that all members were properly trained and are very familiar with the expectations for managing divisions and managing the public service, so to speak, because the THA Act 40 of 1996 gives a Secretary General direction and control over a division as per the law itself. And in this training, we went through political administrative interface, which is to understand the roles and responsibilities of the executive vis-a-vis the public servants, who does what, who has what roles, what are your rights, what are your responsibilities. We also look at intergovernmental affairs quite comprehensively and coherently across divisions as opposed to working in silos, and also how we work in tandem with ministries in Trinidad where there is a need for that. We looked at public procurement and contract regulations, and you'll be happy to note that we have had the chairman of the procurement regulatory board and the head regulator, the procurement regulator, so to speak, of the country join us for that training. And there are still a lot of work for us to do in that area to bring Tobago up to speed with regards to our procurement practices. And in fact, we came away with an undertaking that Tobago, notwithstanding the fact that all of the legislation is not yet assented to or proclaimed, that we will run ahead of the national mandate and build out our procurement platforms to become the example for the rest of the country for how it ought to be done. We also looked at updating our COVID-19 response. That's the Tobago COVID-19 response. We looked at financial management, rules and accounting practices, because you may not know that secretaries are required to sign off approvals for these projects, and any spending that is required in a division, it requires a secretary to sign off on approval. It also requires an approval in some cases to be sent through to the division of finance. And so we wanted everyone to be okra with the financial rules and regulations as it pertains to the THA, and of course proper accounting practices. We also look at the function of the legislature and the THA Act. We went in depth into it, so no member of this team after today has any excuse when it comes to how the THA is supposed to work and what the Act says. We are some mini lawyers now when it comes to the THA Act. We spent some time reviewing and determining deliverables for the first quarter of 2022, and I will share those with you. We looked intensely at Tobago finances. We looked at how we can make some adjustments, where we need to move things from and where we need to move them to, and how we ought to reprioritize for the Tobago space. We held 4 executive council meetings while we were here. So we had 4 executive council meetings in under 7 days. That might be a record. It's usually 1 executive council meeting per week, and we had 4 in this period because we wanted to start the ground running, to run with things. We also look at basic guidelines in protocol and etiquette, because we have now placed as part of our mandate the issue of trade, and we want to begin to find trading partners all over the world. We want to get foreign direct investments. We want to team up with foreign governmental and non-governmental organizations for the benefit of Tobago. And that requires members of the team being proficient in terms of what the protocols are and basic etiquette. We also look at political life and mental health, and that's because the kind of pressures I will be putting on this team on your behalf, I need them to stay in good mental health and be able to manage it well. We also looked at diet and nutrition, and I see one of my secretaries chuckling heartily, and that's because I told him by the end of this 4 years, I want you to still be able to fit in the same suits that you have on now. If you're unhealthy, if our secretaries are unhealthy, then it will impede their ability to work long and hard hours. And we also look at body mobility for public officials. So we had someone come in and teach us how we could stay right at our desk, right in our office, and get the workout in. So that, we are healthy. A healthy body, healthy mind, proper dieting. It means that we will be able to then deliver to Tobago to the best of our abilities. And now for perhaps the most important part of this presser, which is to look at some things we are going to deliver within this first quarter. It is a lengthy list, but what we will do subsequently is that we will provide for you a checklist, and we want you, the members of the public, to help us check them out, because I will return at the end of the quarter to do an assessment of what we were able to achieve, what we fell short of, what we perhaps overestimated or underestimated, and then move us into the next quarter. And that will become a quarterly occurrence. Even if I do not come, the Deputy Chief Secretary may come, or another secretary may come and actually present to you our deliverables for the quarter. So I'm going to indicate to you a list of things we wish to do for this quarter. It will be more than this. There will be some things not mentioned today that will pop up in the quarter. There will be some things that we have not yet discussed or have not yet come to an agreement on that we will do within the quarter. So this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is by no means the only things we will do in the quarter. Let me say that. So if perchance you did not hear something you thought you will hear within this first quarter, it does not mean that it's not up for consideration. But these are some areas that we felt we needed to bring to your attention as we begin this first quarter of 2022. In this quarter of 2022, we will begin a mandate initiative that we call Show Me a Road Tobago. SMART, the acronym is SMART for short, and that's where, using some online platform, you will be able to report to us, self-report those potholes within your street and in your community. We'll be able to geotag them and locate them properly. And we will use a mixture of the division's resources with labor from the community to begin to patch these holes that WASA has left all over the place. We may not have the finances to go on a similarly aggressive road paving campaign as what happened before the election, but at least we could alleviate some of your challenges by patching the potholes, as many as we can get to and as quickly as we can get to them. And we will need your help and your collaboration to be part of that initiative, which we will build out for you in this quarter, and you will understand how it will work. But it's simply called Show Me a Road Tobago, or SMART. We will also continue installing traffic mirrors across the island. A few were installed by the division last year, but given the terrain of Tobago, the geography of Tobago, there is an urgent need for a lot more. And so we are going to be looking at installing traffic mirrors around the island, because many critical areas were missed. The entrance to Pigeon Point, and that's a little over 100 feet. That area there will be milled and resurfaced within this first quarter. We are looking to reopen for tourism and Pigeon Point being the most high traffic area when it comes to visits by tourists to the island, both domestic and international. We need to get that entrance done properly, and that will happen in this first quarter. We will begin looking at the bridge in Google Patch, so we'll look at having it designed in this quarter, and we're looking to start that project in this quarter. Up in Goodwood at James Street, we have a project there that was started, and it's incompleted, and every time the rain falls or drizzles, we have the Murray family being adversely affected, and your area rep made a very strong representation for you, and so we will complete that project and ensure that we'll bring some relief to the residents in that James Street area. An assessment will be done in this quarter of number 1 Village Street, and that's an assessment with the view of widening number 1 Village Street in Mount St. George. So an assessment will be done in this quarter. In this quarter, we are looking at developing a traffic lay-by at the Signal Hill traffic lights, and that's because there is a national mandate to reopen schools in the month of February. And so we are preparing for all the students returning to school and ensuring that they can be safe along the highway as they get re-engaged in face-to-face schooling. We will resume and have a dedicated rural electrification program all around the island. We have a set of darkness. I don't know if Tiantec was preparing for the blackout before we came to the election, but we will have to treat that as a matter of security and a matter of ensuring the roadways are safe for motorists at night. We cannot do all simultaneously, but we are going to resume that rural electrification program with some vigor in this quarter. In this quarter, in fact, tomorrow we are expecting our first international flight in about 2 years, and the mandate is that the division and the stakeholders will look to increase that international flight from that single international flight from BA to increase it, the view of increasing it and having more airlines and international airlifts, at least one more within this quarter. So I am pushing those in the division and the stakeholders to find us at least one more international flight within this quarter. The grants for the tourism workers to date, just a little over 320 applied, and I was advised by the chief administrator that they are about completing the processing of those forms, and I am advising now that we will reopen the application because we are getting some information that some missed the application deadline. So we will do an extension of the application to the end of January. And I am also advising now that those monies will be paid quickly, in fact, within the space of a week to 2 weeks. So within this quarter, we will begin to pay out these grants. Also in this quarter, we will have some meetings with the stakeholders in tourism with a view of assessing how we could be of financial help to those within this sector, because many within this sector are considering fire sales for their properties and for their businesses, and we cannot afford to lose indigenous Tobago businesses at this time. So we are going to be having some meetings. In fact, I'm advised that starting this week, the meetings are already scheduled with all of these stakeholders, and those meetings will result in us finding a way to give some financial assistance to these proprietors within the tourism sector. In agriculture, in this quarter, the mandate is for all the lots at the Bell Garden housing estate to be distributed. I'm starting there. And you may not be aware that as far back as 2016, individuals received their letters Individuals paid insurance on mortgages. Individuals signed mortgage agreements and never received to date those lands that were committed to them. In this quarter, in the very first quarter of 2022, you will get those lands. Even if I have to go and get the lands for myself and give it to you, you will get those lands. The mandate is also that for all the available lots, to do an assessment of all the available lots we have in housing estates across the island, with a view of having them distributed within this first quarter. So this is a sign that this administration is going on an aggressive land for house distribution program. It's starting this quarter, and it is starting with the lots we have available, and that's just there in bush right now. The sewer system at Adventure will finally be fixed, and it will be fixed in this first quarter of 2022. So the residents at Adventure can sleep easier tonight that sewer system that has been kicking for a while will be fixed in this first quarter of 2022. Patience Hill grounds and Louis Dorn grounds, both playing fields, will be assessed in this quarter, and preparation made for lighting those two fields in this first quarter of 2022. Across at Boko, where there is a recreation ground that is attached to the primary school, that playing field, as well as the Charlottesville playing field, will be properly graded and the turf fixed so that we can get people back into exercising. And I will tell you why we need Tobagonians to get up and start exercising soon. In terms of field maintenance, you can see the first set of community groups and or small community contractors receiving contracts for the maintenance of playing fields or playing grounds across the island. We will have the first set, and we are starting, I'm advised, in the Color Hall community, in that area. We are also assessing in this quarter with a view of upgrading and having a comprehensive waste management plan for the island. I know we have had various plans, but we are still getting lots of complaints about garbage collection across the island. People are asking for bins, people are asking for all sorts of stuff. But we'll have a comprehensive program started in this first quarter. And let me add that the white waste collection that normally happens at the end of the calendar year for Christmas, that will now happen quarterly. So you're not waiting whole year to throw out your stove and your fridges and all the white waste. Once per quarter, we'll be doing that collection. A schedule will be done and a schedule will be given out, and we will meet those schedules. Please adhere to the schedule. Don't just go and dump it outside of the scheduled times. We beg of you, Tobagonians. The development workers in agriculture, there is a long-standing issue there where the development workers in agriculture, some have worked for in excess of 20 years, retired. No benefits, nothing put in place insofar as a gratuity at the pensionable age. That we are fixing post haste. We are fixing as if it was due yesterday, because this is a matter that could easily embarrass us in Tobago, a matter that we are certain to lose in court, and we want to fix the tenureship of the development workers in agriculture. We can't have people working for 20 plus years, retire from a program, and there are no benefits accrued from doing that. That cannot meet any best practice in so far as industrial relations go. And that will happen in the first quarter of this year. We are also looking to assess and reopen all our Y zones, because we recognize that there's still a need for people to get access. And these Y zones come with Wi-Fi capabilities or capacity. So it doesn't mean everybody trying to cram themselves into these containers. But the Wi-Fi capabilities will be made available to the community. So you can sit around on the outside. It's a nice dry season, and from all indications, it will be a very dry season. And so you don't need to worry too much about rain. Sit around outside and get access. The Susuland Park will be named within this quarter. We will also be launching a faith-based forum within this quarter. There will be a new TATCO board to be established, in fact, within this week coming. And there will also be some significant readjustments in how those entities under TATCO will operate. And now everyone is talking about flour and the rising price of wheat globally. And if you look at the global market push and pull factors on wheat prices, we can see wheat prices continuing to rise for the foreseeable future. In other words, wheat prices will not be going down. It is regrettable that with all the cassava company we have had and all the monies we have paid people over these umpteen years, that we are not yet the number one producers of alternative flours within the Caribbean region. That's the mandate. And so I am aware that a facility was being built out in Goldsboro that is meant to take all of these root crops and process them. And we're partnering with private enterprise, because we know also that there are some of you doing it as your private business and you are doing an excellent job, and we want to support you, and we will bring you in and allow you to use the facilities as well so that you can improve on what you are offering. But by the hook or the crook, by the time we get to the end of this quarter, Tobago must be well on its way to becoming the largest producer of alternative flours across the Caribbean region. Finally, that boat, not finally as in the last thing, but finally after this such a long time, that boat that washed ashore, or that was brought ashore rather, in Belgarden Bay, it will be removed, right? At this point, I am not so concerned about who wants the boat and what regulatory boards want to do with the boat. It has been there far too long, collecting water, becoming a cesspool, becoming a place of mosquito larvae, and we will just have that boat. The instruction to the secretary with responsibility for health, and who is also the representative, is to find a way to remove the boat from Belgarden Bay. The Tobago Sea School, in conjunction with the THA, will be providing in this quarter free diving lessons and training for fishermen across Tobago. So for all fishermen across Tobago in this quarter, we'll be coming to you and we'll be providing free training in diving, inclusive of free diving. You never know when you might need the skills out at sea, but that training will be provided for you. Also, in this first quarter, we are looking to bring all of our fishermen up to speed with the upcoming or the incoming regulations governing how we use those pirogues. In fact, at this moment, those regulatory conditions are voluntary. But pretty soon it will become mandatory, meaning by law, fishermen will be required to have insurance, have a certain number of life vests on their boats. And so we are going to all our fisher folk with a view of bringing you all up to speed with what the legislation says, even before it becomes mandatory. On the campaign trail, we promise to treat with the issue of contract employment on the island. And this is major for us. And so we are starting within the TRHA. We are starting with those people who have been at the forefront of the fight against COVID. And based on assessment, we have 133 employees whose status are viewed as temporary. It could be COVID temporary or just temporary. And for these 133 workers, Once you are under the age of 60, you will automatically be offered a 3-year contract immediately. That is being prepared for you. So those workers within the TRHA that are viewed as temporary, you have a little more stability in terms of your employment status. And we are doing that because we recognize that there is a need to fix the establishment. And it will take Assistant Secretary Williams or a bit longer to go through the establishment and with the relevant boards, public service boards, to have the establishment done up properly. And so in the meanwhile, we will not have you languishing on 3-month contracts or even 1-year contracts. The minimum tenureship for your contract within the TRHA as of now, for those 133 workers, those who are under the age of 60, will be a 3-year contract. For those over the age of 60 or 60 and older, we will treat with you on a case-by-case basis. And once there is strong recommendation from the leaders in the healthcare sector for you, we will consider it for you, right? Because there is an existing THA policy where the THA was attempting to streamline contracts for people over the age of 60. Although that only held true for some people and not for others. But we are looking at that, and we will assess you if you're over the age of 60. But for all of those within the 133 that are under the age of 60, the minimum contractual arrangement you will have will be 3 years. And that's effective immediately. So we will have legal do up the contracts and make it available to you as soon as possible. We are also at the moment reviewing and looking for lands so that within this quarter we can have some new public cemeteries within the Tobago space. We have had some cemeteries that for a while we have been short on space. Not even with COVID. Pre-COVID, some of these cemeteries were bursting at their seams. And so there's a need for us to organize to have a proper burial ground available. In education, there are a couple things. The secretary and the assistant secretary, they are meeting actively with the Teaching Service Commission at the moment, because we have quite a number of teachers with outstanding leaves to be processed, teachers with upgrades and increments and establishment to be fixed. And the mandate is that by the end of the first quarter, those should be no more. Those should be fixed. Additionally, the division will be providing for all schools commercial size sanitizers. You might just know it in your head as a fogger, but that's commercial grade sanitizers to facilitate the reopening of school in full. So that naturally will happen in this quarter. For secondary schools, we visited secondary schools on last Monday, and I visited 2 of those schools along with the team. And in every school, you keep popping up a lot of simple things that just aren't being fixed in a timely manner. And when I inquired as to why, I'm being told that, there's a process. The school has these issues, they report them to education, and PIU in education will send out a notice, find some contractors, and they go and they try to remedy the issue, even if they are simple things. And so what we are looking to create within the division for secondary schools is a sort of a multidisciplined maintenance team that will be roving around all secondary schools throughout the school year, in and out of the school year, to ensure that the simple things are fixed quickly. Because some of these things we don't need to necessarily contract the services. If it is, we have a team of workers that can go and make the fixes quickly. And that will help with monitoring and evaluation in terms of the physical school plans. and that will reduce the cost we will have to pay to contractors and the cost we will have to pay when some of these fixes go, these problems go unfixed for a long time. Can you imagine in some schools we have leaks within walls, months, a year pass, no fix. You know what's going to happen over time? The integrity of the building will deteriorate, and we'll have to find millions to rebuild an entire wall when we could have just had a simple team come in and fix that simple leak. And it's that kind of remedying that we are looking to fix with this multidisciplinary hybrid team. In this quarter, in fact, next week, Tuesday, I will be visiting along with the area representatives and the secretary for the division treating with marine affairs, the Plymouth Jetty, along with the leaseholder for the lands surrounding the Plymouth Jetty. That has been a bugbear for a long while, and we finally have the leaseholder on board. The lands surrounding the jetty is not in the control of the Tobago House of Assembly. If you did not know, it's in the hands of a leaseholder, private leaseholder. And so that in itself created a challenge with getting the jetty fixed, because we could not just march in and take up somebody's land and start to work. We do not have compulsory acquisition rights in the laws for the Tobago House of Assembly. And so on Tuesday, we will begin the process of looking at how quickly we could have the Plymouth Jetty fixed. And since we're talking about jetties, I'm making it known that the Little Tobago Jetty will commence in this first quarter of 2022. We will not get to another tourist peak season without it. We have been without it for as long as I can remember, for donkey years, and it will be fixed. We will start to fix it. Of course, it cannot be done and completed in this quarter, but I'm saying definitively that we will start it in this first quarter of 2022. Additionally, the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary will be built out and opened in this first quarter of 2022. This is the first time the THA is having the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary as a standalone division. For those who are unaware of what the THA Act says, it says quite clearly that the Executive Council is made up of the Chief Secretary, the Deputy Chief Secretary, and not more than 7 other secretaries. That makes it 9. So the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary will remain a standalone entity in this dispensation until I may choose to reconsider it. And in addition to that, we will be assessing in this quarter building out an outpost in Trinidad. And this is something we campaigned on, about having that outpost in Trinidad that will allow for us to market Tobago goods, to speak to the challenges faced by Tobagonians living there, to attract investors and engage investors in Tobago, to pursue Tobago's autonomy issue, and to help with the re-education of Trinidadians about Tobago's drive for self-determination. And so we are opening the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary in this quarter, and we are also assessing having that outpost in Trinidad. And by the way, this is not a novel idea for countries with the kind of setup like we do. There is a Scottish House in London. The state of Florida has an office akin to an embassy in Washington, D.C. So it's not anywhere new. It's not, I don't even know if to call it imaginative, given the fact that it exists in other jurisdictions. This will just be the first time Tobago is considering this matter. And hopefully I did not miss any, except to the last one, is that effective immediately, we will be asking the executive, that is, will be asking the chief administrator to send out a circular notifying of the change in policy with regards to the dress code for seeking services in a THA office. This is not for workers, this is for the public. So effective immediately and as soon as that notice is out, those clumsily written signs about no shorts, no sleeveless, no slippers will be removed, and as public servants, we will all serve the people regardless. The entities like schools and other specialized areas that require specialized outfit and perhaps PPE, they of course will retain their dress code policies. However, for the general public service and the general divisions within the THA, we will be removing that dress code policy almost immediately, as soon as it will take the chief administrator to prepare that circular, and you can see a laxing of that policy. We are not in any way the first in the Caribbean to do this. I think Jamaica did this about a year to 2 years ago, and other Caribbean territories have done it before. It's about shaking off the vestiges of colonialism that we have held on to for dear life, and no one can convince me that in the tropics that we ought to turn people back because they may be wearing a slipper. That cannot be reasonable. The taxpayers are paying us. We will dress up. We, the public servants, will dress up. Notice I said that the rule is not for workers. Workers are still expected to dress professionally. We will dress professionally, and we will go and serve the people however they come. In fact, I've even been told of anecdotes where tourists and people from the cruise ships will come off and will go to the division of tourism and be turned back because they're not wearing a long pants or they have a slippers on their feet. That cannot be how we do business in the tropics. And so that policy is being shifted for the first time in the country, and it starts with Tobago. Again, we are not the first to do it in the Caribbean, and I know we will not be the last to do it in the region either. Just ensure you wear a mask. And so we will be able to tell our children some years to come of that narrative I heard on Radio Tambourine a while back, where a gentleman went to Inland Revenue and was turned back because his pants were short. He was wearing a short pants. And he proceeded to borrow a dress from someone that was shorter than the pants he was wearing, and he was allowed to enter with a dress that was shorter than the three-quarter pants he was wearing. That in itself should speak to how the ridiculous nature of that dress code that was there. So if you happen to be in Scarborough and you want to do business, or you didn't plan to go in a THA division and something pop up, you now can, because we will be altering that dress code policy to serve you as you come. For us, the workers, for us, the public servants, we will dress up professionally, and dressing professionally can also mean having a sleeveless as well. Once you are dressed professionally, you and your supervisors will assess what professionally means. We'll dress up professionally, and we will show up and serve the people of Tobago. I think I've gone through all the varying deliverables for the first quarter. As I indicated at the top, these are not by any means, and this is not by any means an exhaustive list. Other things will happen. We have other boards beside TATCO we will build out in this quarter. We will readjust in some areas. The realignment of division is still happening. You will appreciate that that cannot just happen overnight. That requires moving of staff around from one division to the other. It requires changing of letterhead and names and bank checks. So there is that process is already being engaged through MSU, which is a department of the Office of the Chief Secretary that does management services within the Tobago House of Assembly. So that process is also on the way. I'm already seeing 4 hands up for questions. The first hand that was up from the very first line, I don't know what she had to ask her, but I invite you, Ms. Jackson. Good afternoon, Ms. Jackson.
Good afternoon, Chief Secretary, and compliments of the season and all the blessings for the new year. So my first question is in regards to the road repair program, right? I just said you were going through with this new campaign to at least fix some of the holes. So was there any checking done as to the roads that were fixed before the election? Because some of them are in perhaps a worse state now than it was prior to being horribly paved. And my second question has to do with the tour operators who are unable to go out, even though the beaches are reopened for the morning period. They are still unable to go out and conduct tours and continue to be stifled. I didn't hear that at all mentioned in your list as something that you are treating with. And then thirdly, on the matter of returning international flights, is there, I know one of the concerns that it was not allowed before was because of the health capacity and so on. Is there any change to our health system that would allow for international flights to return to Tobago? Thank you.
I thank you. So you asked in essence 3 questions. You spoke to if we are doing checks of the roads that were done in the lead up to the election. Yes, those are being done. And like you, we are finding that a lot of these works were horribly done. And you know what is sad? They have been paid for in full. And so we are assessing them. We are also looking to see who engineer or clerk of works or QS went and actually certified these works as being done to the extent of them being paid. So somebody would have to answer for that. So yes, to answer your question in short, assessment is being done of the roads that were done prior to election. In fact, that assessment is happening as we speak. In terms of tour operators, yes, and advocacy and letters have been sent all the way down to the Ministry of Health and so on, looking at getting the tour operators up and running. Because there is a need for a variance with regards to Tobago. What's the point of opening the beaches and you can't get to Nylon Pool, or you can't go on a glass bottom boat and go across? I mean, you may not be able to hop off on the Pisa jetty in Little Tobago, but you can see the reefs. And so we are looking at that. And one of the things it slipped me to mention is that in this quarter, in fact, very early on, you could look at us going to the House to debate even a motion about opening the beaches in full. Because the policy as it is now was not well thought out. We have an entire island and visitors and everybody rushing to go to the beach within a limited period of time, which naturally means that you will have a more crowd. It's more crowded. If it was open throughout the day, it means some could go morning, some could go evening, some could go before sunrise, some could go at sunset, and you could more or less go at your leisurely time. With the limited time, what is happening, we have found, is that everybody is trying to rush to the beach at the same time. And so that is another matter that we are looking into, and you will hear more from your secretaries in the Division of Tourism where that is concerned. The matter of returning international flight and our capacity, and you indicated that it was said before that our healthcare capacity was not there yet to allow for these international flights. I'm not sure what was happening before, but I can tell you as of now, we are ready and prepared. In fact, the healthcare professionals have been to the airport, they have done test runs, they have assessed the gaps, they have closed the gaps. We have procured things that we did not have before to allow for the safe landing of these flights. And so we are ready to do business. We have to simultaneously treat with COVID and treat with our tourism industry and reopening for business. COVID is not going anywhere, so we have to look at ways we can treat with all of these issues simultaneously. And let me hasten to add before you ask. I did not address our COVID plan here because some drastic measures will come from, will be taken by your executive. But we wanted to consult with those within the sector first before bringing them to you. So we will do that consultation tomorrow, thereabout, and within this week, you will hear about some drastic steps your executive will take to turn around what is happening there with COVID. Reducing our mortality rate, for example, is high on the list. So if you did not hear it, and before you ask about it, it's only because we have not had the opportunity to consult thoroughly with those in the field, why we are not bringing the plans we have already okayed, the policies we have already okayed here to you. And while I'm on it, let me remind you that you still have to protect yourself at the end of the day. No one is going to protect you but you. Protect yourself at the end of the day. Ensure that you wear your mask, that you social distance. I still see people trying to hide and zest all over the place. You have to protect yourself. Protect yourself. No one can do that but you. And for those of us on this island who have existing conditions, pre-existing conditions, I mean, I don't have any, but there are many, many Tobagonians who do. And Trinidad and Tobago as a whole, as one country, we are perhaps like about 4th in the world when it comes to hypertension and diabetes, which is extremely high. You need to get up and do some physical exercise. You need to also spend some time eating healthily. You need to protect yourself even more than you did before. And pretty soon, the Division of Health will be doing some educational videos and so on with you. That's so that you will understand simple things like breathing exercises you should do if it is you contract COVID. How do you manage COVID should you contract it? And we are preparing for almost the inevitable, which is that we will have new variants coming. And that's something that we are preparing for. But we will address COVID in greater detail later on in this week because we feel like we need to consult with our medical professionals first before bringing to you the policy directive that we will take. Next, we have Cassandra Thompson-Forbes, I-95.
Good afternoon, Chief. Happy New Year to you and your Executive Council. My first question, you would have highlighted a very large list of anticipated deliverables. Can you indicate the costs allocated, please? I don't think that you gave us a cost or what was allocated from central government to you. My second question, you also spoke about the regularization of the TRHA workers who are on short-term employment. But there is also the issue throughout the whole Tobago House of Assembly of persons working on month-to-month contracts. So are there any plans available to regularize these employees as well? And thirdly, the Mauritanian boat, where would it be sent? That's it. Thank you.
I thank you. First thing, cost of deliverables. What we did was to pull out what we view are low-hanging fruits. Yes, it might seem like a lengthy list, but these are really low-hanging fruits. Things that should have been done donkey years now, over the last 10 years, over the last 20 years, and that for some strange reason was never done. So these are things that we could pull immediately and get done without a lot of heavy lifting and at minimal cost. And let me give you an example. You spoke about THA allocation from central government. That allocation remains the same. And I've already had a discussion with the central government through the Minister of Finance about sending our monies as is dictated by the law. And so I'm waiting to see him do that for this quarter because a new quarter is starting now. And so we expect to get our monies delivered to us for the quarter at the start. And so what we are doing is using what was already budgeted for us, because you will appreciate that some other people wasted away $163 million of bond financing. And so we are restricted to using within the confines of only what we are budgeted at the moment. and using that to reprioritize in a way that we could take care of the low-hanging fruits. With regards to the issue of contract employment throughout the THA, you are right. It is endemic to the THA operations, these short-term contracts that don't make sense. We are only starting with those in the TRHA because we believe at this very moment they deserve to be the starting point. But we will be going through all the divisions and all the departments, getting it done. In fact, we have already started. So you see, in the same way, I could say to you definitively that we have 133 temporary workers on these types of short-term contracts. That's because we have had the assessment completed within the TRHA before others as well. And so that assessment will be done, and it will happen throughout other divisions in the THA. This is just the start. And with regards to the boat from the moratorium, we just need to get the boat dumped. We don't need the boat to keep for ourselves. The boat, I don't believe, is of any historic significance. We can check it and see. But we just can't have the boat down the beach collecting water. Over time, the water starts smelling because it becomes a natural cesspool there, mosquito larva there. That just defies all logic when it comes to health principles. So there's no need for the boat to just remain there. I will leave it up to the Secretary of Health and the experts within that division to decide what's the best use and or relocation and or removal policy for that boat, but the boat needs to be removed. Next we have Miss Elizabeth Williams, TV6 News.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chief Secretary, to you and your team. One of my questions is, what is the cost of the 5-day retreat? And my other question, in terms of the audit, I know when we had the sit-down interview with you at TV6, you mentioned that the audit was going to start the following week. Has that audit started? And another question, how many advisors have been contracted by the present Tobago House of Assembly, and if any salaries could be revealed as to these advisors?
I thank you. And I hope I didn't miss one of your questions. Right, so the cost of the retreat. So let me deal with that first. Allow me to just pull up the figures that I have. I can tell you for this retreat, on budget, meaning already established as budget and money set aside for, was in the vicinity of $204,000 for having this kind of retreat in this fiscal year. We were more or less sort of slightly underneath that. What I asked OCS to do was to look at the cost of retreats across a 5-year period, look at the most expensive one, and to try to cap our retreats in and around that vicinity, taking into consideration, of course, inflation of prices, right? And over the last 5 years, our most expensive retreat venture was at $138,667.43. And this retreat, when I checked before we arrive here, and there may be some incidentals that will take the cost up a little more than that, we were just at $170,000, and that is for the single largest retreat the THA has ever had, because this is the first time we have an assembly with 15 members, and so you're talking about 14 members plus 3 councillors. So this is the single largest retreat we have had. This is perhaps also the most intense in terms of the number of days for retreat we have had, and so to be at 170 when we were paying in the vicinity of 130-something thousand, given inflation and the rise in prices and so on over the period, it means that we have capped it within the same region, accounting for inflation, the same region in terms of the price of the retreat. We were very sure to do that. In terms of auditors, I will let you know that internal auditing has already begun their work. So internal auditing have already gone to some departments and taken, based on instruction, books and ledgers and so on, have started the work. I do not want to say more about the auditing process, because one important element of auditing is the element of surprise, right? And I can tell you that sometime soon I will give you more details on the auditing process, but yes, that process of auditing some departments and divisions of the THA, that process has already begun. The matter of advisors to date, and today is the 9th of January, to this very day, the 9th of January, only one single advisor has been contracted by the THA. For an advisor to be contracted, it must come through exec council note. And I can tell you that by policy, that by entitlement, each secretary is entitled to primarily four personal staff, as it is called. A personal advisor, a personal secretary, a personal assistant, and a driver. Those four. And those salaries have been set even before we got here. You asked about advisor in particular, and my colleagues will help me if I quote the wrong figure, but an advisor based on the established salary received $19,400 and a traveling of $2,800. This salary structure is not unique to the THA. The THA actually adopted it from the cabinet a while back. So in other words, the THA pays the advisors the same thing that cabinet pays. The THA previous to us basically took the same cabinet policy and decided to go with it as opposed to varying it. And to date, only one advisor has been approved by the Executive Council. So only one advisor is on the payroll as of this moment. And that advisor that was already approved as of this moment is in the Division of Community Development, Youth Development and Sport. And that's Mr. Gladstone Solomon. If you would like for me to have the secretary forward his CV for you, for the public to see, then that's fine. I'm all in the interest of transparency. But only one has been appointed by Exec Council note as of now. I know there have been some chatter in the space because people saw some volunteers around. Seeing people around doesn't mean that they're on the payroll. I will be sure to let you know when we fill out advisors, because this is something that is absolutely needed. Secretaries will need a sort of expert advice very close to them. However, we felt as a team that there were other more significant issues that should get our first attention before working out the matter with advisors. So we are in January. We are just shy of a month. Well, no, it's exactly a month today. Today is the 9th. So it's exactly 1 month since coming into office today, and we only have on payroll a single advisor that has been approved by the Executive Council. One advisor. The others will be built out over time because secretaries will have to consider the matter very carefully, and you will know that the salaries being paid to advisors is not something we invent, but it's something that comes from cabinet note that the previous administration adopted. And I can tell you, we do not have a view to alter that, although our exec council can alter that and can pay somebody more or so on. We are not of the view that we are going to alter that at this moment, especially given the financial constraints of the THA. We will have, within this fiscal year at least, work within the confines of what is budgeted and some of the old principles. But that is the general cost of an advisor as per exec council note from sometime as far back as 2014. I believe it was when the policy was implemented. Yes, 2014 is a long time ago, but unfortunately, we're not in a position to upgrade that note at this time. And next we have Mr. Whitfield Turner.
Good afternoon, Chief. I have a few pointers here. I'll just run them through quickly. First up, the issue of ex gratia payments. Persons are asking if that's still something that they can look forward to, and if so, how soon? Also, as it pertains to the airport situation, if you can give us an update on that as it pertains to the persons who have been relocated, how things are progressing with them. And while we are on the issue of airports, the flights from Tobago, are you looking at having flights from Tobago into the region, or do we have to wait until the new terminal is completed? And what about Sunwing? Are we looking at getting them back on the run for the next tourism season? And finally, a date for the budget that you promised us in this particular month of January.
Okay, thank you. Let me start with the last one first. The last question about a date for new budget priorities in the month of January. The House meets on the 4th Thursday in January, and so you can look forward to that on the 4th Thursday in the month of January. The matter of regional flights and whether we will wait until a terminal is completed to attract regional flights here, the answer to that in short is no. As I indicated, the instruction, the mandate to the division is to go out and to seek these flights and to get them coming in here, because we are talking about getting our tourism product up, back and running. Relocation for the airport, there is a airport relocation committee or board, and that committee will be established later this week. When that committee is established, that will treat to the attending issues for those who are to be relocated from the airport, and we're not going to them with the same sort of dogmatic attitude that happened before. There's a change of government and also a change of attitude where that is concerned. So the residents in that area can feel easy knowing that you have a team that is actually willing to listen to you and to help treat with the issues. So that airport relocation committee that will be reinstituted, one existed before, we will have to fill it out now, given that there's a change of government. And so by the end of the week, you will be able to engage that committee. And with the matter of ex gratia payment, no, it's actually not off the table at all. And you know what is interesting in this, and I'm smiling now, is that I remember when the matter was first raised, there was a lot of chatter in the space about ex gratia payment. And some said it's a mad thing to offer it. And then some said it means that we will be doing severance, we'll be sending people home. But I'm smiling now because many more Tobagonians have gotten to realize that several of their Caribbean brothers and sisters received ex gratia payments and they weren't sent home, and they received it for Christmas, and that it is quite a normal thing for governments around the region. When I looked around the region and I saw even Barbados having a tax-free day for shopping towards the end of the year, I asked myself, what have we really given to the people of this country? What has the government given us as something to say, look, we had a rough year, look at look something. And so for us, the short answer is no, that is not off the table, and that's something that you will hear about more definitively within a 2 weeks time, because within that time we'll be able to build out clearly how we will do this remuneration structure and how we'll pull the resources for it, because we're doing that sort of reprioritizing. And of course, you will hear about it closer to the revealing of the new priorities, new budget, so to speak, for the island of Tobago. Next we have Camille Mckinney.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chief Secretary, Secretaries and Assistant Secretaries. First question, what is in place for tourists in terms of state quarantine in Tobago? I know there's something in place in Trinidad, but what is in place for when tourists come to Tobago tomorrow? In terms of update, could you tell us what's happening regarding the issue for THA workers in terms of their vaccination status, and whether or not the THA would follow the government's policy of not allowing unvaccinated workers into the workplace after January 15th. Thirdly, I know when you guys were campaigning and after, you indicated that in order for Tobago to move forward, you needed to do some research. So I'm asking you for the update in terms of PRDI and what's going to happen in Tobago. And as you mentioned, you talk about foreign direct investment to Tobago. We know that the business sector has been indicating for a number of years that the current Foreign Investment Act as it is prevents people from or is not positive in terms of allowing people to come to Tobago, is not favorable because of how it stands. Will the current executive make representation to central government to address the limitations within the existing Foreign Investment Act?
Okay, thank you. Right, with regards to visitors to the island, tourists who may require quarantine, similar structure as in Trinidad applies for Tobago. So that is already there and in place. So same procedure, that does not change at all. You get here, you need to be quarantined. You'll be quarantined at, in fact, you pay, the visitor pays to be quarantined. So it's a similar structure. And I think that exists in other Caribbean territories as well. Secondly, with regards to the vaccination policy, I have asked for an assessment to be done of our own conditions here, and I received a preliminary report this weekend from the chief administrator, and I have asked for some gaps within that report to be closed. When those gaps are closed, and by Wednesday, we will look at it and assess what we wish to do in the THA. Let me be very clear that the Tobago House of Assembly will make a decision as to what we will do with the workers that we pay. And that will be based on the assessment, the results of the assessment that is being done. That should be completed by tomorrow, because there were about 2 or 3 gaps I asked the chief administrator to close in terms of the data, which will be able to say to us definitively how many people are vaccinated in different departments and divisions and so on. And I could tell you from a cursory look at the data, if we are to go with that policy, I can tell you we may have a situation where the vaccinated will show up to work, but they will not get paid, because there just will not be sufficient staff to do payroll, and you will show up at the hospital and half of the staff will not be there. And I don't know if that is what we want to do with the workers that we are paying, meaning the THA is paying. And we have to look at Tobago's best needs, and there may be better ways of encouraging vaccination than this method. I also wish to say here, because we have been getting some reports from some workers, strictly enough reports that some workers are showing up to work, and some supervisors are saying you can't return to work if you're not vaccinated, and they're not paying you and so on. Let me be clear. The THA has given no such instruction to no public servant anywhere, and the THA will not be accepting any legal challenge on that matter. So supervisors, if you proceed in that way without clear directives from the executive of the THA that by law is responsible for policy making on the island, you are on your own legally. All I'm saying is that the 15th is a way off. Allow us to assess the thing properly and decide what is best for Tobago. And we will do what is best for Tobago on that matter. In terms of PRDI and research, yes, discussions are well on the way with that. In fact, we have had active discussions with Dr. Vanush James, who was the individual that spearheaded the commencing of PRDI. In fact, when we toured that building the Monday after being sworn in, the staff there actually took us and showed us the desks and the area where Dr. James sat as they built out, and all of them sat at Dr. James's feet and they built out. our research policy and capabilities for the island as a key component of developing the island. And so we are looking to head back in that direction. Dr. James has consented to meeting with me at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, and that is to discuss this matter further, how we can get back to that place where we get robust statistics. And I don't want you to trivialize the need for this. About 2 years ago, I brought a motion to the House for us to look at the cost of living in Tobago comparative to Trinidad and look for solutions to bringing down the cost of living. Because it's no secret, almost everything in Tobago is more expensive than in Trinidad. And when I was looking for the stats to see what the stats said, the most recent report we had on that matter was more than 10 years old, and was a report done by Mr. Anselm Richards and those guys when they were PRDI donkey years ago. We cannot build out good policy if we're not doing good research. And it's a travesty what has been allowed to happen to PRDI and planning in that regard. And I can also let you know that some preparation is being made across that PRDI building to house folks from town and country planning who are coming up from Trinidad, because we are on the cusp of entering into new legal arrangements when it comes to approving plans to town and country planning and so on. That kind of work requires a strong research component, requires a staff that is expert in those areas, in planning, and planning comes with research. So yes, that is well on the way. And the matter of FDI, and you raised an important issue about the Foreign Direct Investment Act, that act in terms of the Foreign Land Holders Act and the variation of it that with regards to Tobago. You know, one of the reasons why I said last year that the THA Act that has been brought before the Parliament was insufficient is because that act would have retained this function with the central government. As far as we are concerned, it should not be the central government deciding which foreigner can buy land in Tobago and where. That should be a function of the THA, not the central government. And so we are opposed to the arrangement as it is now structured. And we have been very clear and on the record as saying that that function should be with the THA, full stop. That's it. Nobody in Trinidad, no minister in Trinidad should be deciding that for us. It's our land. And we should be the ones deciding that for ourselves. And that's where we have to start on this matter. And I'm very clear where that is concerned, because Tobago's land is a significant part of our heritage. And we took an important lesson from 2013, and we are still standing in defense of Tobago all now. Next, we have Mr. George Leacock.
Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
All. I suspect that I might be a little bit disappointed in what I heard, because I was kind of geared to hear what's happening with the development projects that have started, that even during the campaign we found to be not oriented appropriately. We're talking about things like starting the construction of a single basketball or indoor facility when we do have 3 different sporting disciplines. We're talking about the pavilion that appears to be pointing in the wrong direction in Goodwood in terms of development projects. And we also may be expected to hear by now about things like some rural advisory committee that people are getting $20,000 or more than that, apparently including a number of former assemblymen receiving these funds for doing what we are not sure. Maybe they are doing something that's very useful that we need to hear about, and all of that. But a heavy part of the campaign that you recently led had to do with taking care of these areas where they appear to be sort of anomalies in how things were being managed, how funds were being distributed, how contracts were being distributed, and all of that. And I don't know if I did miss the very first few moments, but what you pointed to was sort of a getting to work and getting on with the job. I know that some of these things are important and critical that you must get on with, but it seems as though a little bit of truth and reconciliation, as happened in South Africa, may have been in order, and maybe what we might have been looking at this time, we had named them, don't need to go over them, food card, whatever going on during the election. And I was really expecting that those would have been among the first things addressed when you came today.
All right, so let me just touch on it for a bit. And it was purposeful in not addressing them here and now, because we wanted to send the signal that notwithstanding all the madness that transpired in the lead up to the December 6 polls, that we are ready to work and to get the work going. And we did not want, at this very first press conference for the calendar year 2022, for people to misconstrue our presentation as being an extension of the political campaign. And so the decision to not address those matters here was quite purposeful. And it's not that they are being swept under the rug. In fact, we have no rug to sweep it under, right? And it's not that we are sweeping it outdoors to be lost. We have swept it up, we have collected the pieces, and we will report to you in short order. But we felt that today wasn't the best time and the best day to present that information. So yes, that assessment, and I spoke a little bit about it, about the fact that these projects that were done in haste in a lead up to an election, they were poorly done. And in many cases, contractors were paid in full for work that is either still incompleted or poorly done. And somebody will have to pay for it or pay me back for it, because I ain't going to look for money to pay for work that was already supposed to be done properly. So somebody will have to pay for that. And let me make it clear, I ain't make any deals with anybody to come here. And so I am very confident from where I sit as the Secretary of Finance, Trade and the Economy, that certain hard decisions can be made, because nobody ain't carrying basket for me anyway, right? Nobody ain't give me no big money, no about, in no lead up to no campaign. So there's nothing to be fearful of. It's just that I felt, and we felt, that now was not the most appropriate time to treat with these matters, because it will simply be viewed that a month from the election, we are still in election mode. We will treat with those issues forcefully. And yes, we are well aware of the waste of time Rural Development Committee, where everybody getting 20-something thousand, and I can't see a single engineer on that committee, a single spatial plan on the committee, a single coastal nobody on the committee, nobody for tourism, nobody for environment on the committee, just giving party members who want to give a work a big money when the month come, so that I don't know if they could still pay their bills. Instructions have been very clear where that is concerned, because that is one of those committees that will be reconstituted. I will let you know when it comes to food card. The very day I was sworn in as the secretary with responsibility for finance, well, the day I appointed myself as the secretary for finance, trade and the economy, that very day a vault which was in the office of the secretary that stored the food cards were promptly moved out of my office, because I have a very clear policy. No secretary, no assemblyman, no councillor know about getting food cards to be distributed anywhere, right? We will build out the Department of Social Protection that will do that kind of distribution. I've already signaled to the administrator of the division and to the secretaries in the other division that we're making way to move the staff that dealt with food cards across to meet up with Assistant Secretary Mr. Craig and the team across that social protection. We know that there's need for some space there because we rented a building that was never big enough to hold the entire division in the first place, but we'll figure out a way to house them, and we will get going with that program because we can't stop the program. People are in need, right? But there's a clear indication that we're heading in a different direction. And it's not secretaries just taking cards out willy-nilly. I could also tell you here that we have had conversations with First Citizens Bank that was producing those food cards, and that they are very costly to be produced and maintained. And as early as March, we're looking to have, and that's another deliverable in this quarter that I did not talk about. As early as March, we are looking to go the route of using an e-wallet system as opposed to the hard plastic cards, which will save us millions in terms of the distribution of these resources. So we are exploring these issues. We have not spoken to some of them as yet, because sometimes you have to give people a little rope to hang themselves. Some have been hanging themselves and hanging themselves high. They're very suicidal with the moves that they have been making. So please don't think for a second that we have reconciliated and we are going to sweep it under the carpet. No, that's not going to happen. We just felt that this first press conference at exactly 1 month upon being put into office should be primarily about putting Tobago back to work and putting all of our secretaries to work. That's priority number one, and they ain't going anywhere. We will treat with the issues, the attending issues subsequently. And I see some repeatful questions, so I'll take one from Thompson Forbes, one from Candice Jackson, one from Elizabeth Williams, and a final one from Mr. Leacock. So hold on, maybe I'll take Mr. Leacock first because I'm assuming his follow-up question might be immediate to something I just said. So, Mr. Leacock, you can go immediately.
It's going to be a quick one. Have all the members of all the boards of these various companies that the Tobago House of Assembly have put in place resigned, and also have those individuals who are on national boards but representing the Tobago House of Assembly resigned? I understand there are two kinds. There are people who are national boards who have been nationally appointed, and there are people who have been appointed to represent the Tobago House of Assembly. Have those persons resigned?
Right. We have had some resignations from some of the boards. We have had some resignations from some of the Tobagonians that are THA representatives on national boards. I can tell you the clear instruction to the Chief Administrator from the Executive Council is that effective December 2021, except if we had asked you to hold on for a bit, all boards are considered vacant. So if you're on a board and didn't resign, whether you're sending a resignation now or not, it no longer matters. Consider yourself out, right? Secondly, the Minister of Finance has agreed to send for us in Tobago a listing of all the people who are on national boards as THA representatives, and a distinction must be made. Some statutory boards, the law or the regulation require that a THA representative be placed on the board. And in some cases, the cabinet may have taken a decision to install a Tobago representative, not necessarily a representative of the THA, but just find somebody from Tobago to put on the board. So the Minister of Finance will be sending that entire list for us at the start of this week, coming week. We will certainly call and remind him. The Minister of Finance is the corporation sole for the central government, and so all boards, regardless of which ministry they belong to, they all by law really and truly report to the Minister of Finance, who is the corporation sole of the country. And so he's going to send us that list. That's something we spoke about and that he's going to do. And of course, all of those who are THA reps on those boards, we will replace if needs be. And it's not about going in with a hatchet, because there are some individuals that are quite talented and skilled. And if we feel that you have more to offer and you can remain on a board, we will keep you. But it's about the principle of the thing. Nobody is going to hog tie this current administration into keeping them on a board. You don't own a board. A board is not some contract you get indefinitely. and I'm noticing some of the culprits who have not resigned at all. And there have been some instances where we have had to ask people to return government property where they were busy buying MacBook laptops and so on for board members and so on. All of those are being treated with. We may not have done it in the media. We may not have come to lambaste you and to plasma anybody, as the young people will say. But for certain, as of January 1, none of these boards continue to exist, except in a few cases where we ask some critical members of boards who were signatories to banking accounts to remain so that the business of the entity could continue while a new board is being selected. And let me give you the assurance that on these boards, coming boards, you will see fresh faces, you will see young people. Young people, you will be more than a secretary on a board now. You will actually have voting rights and a say on boards. We will be scrutinizing people for what they can bring, either by virtue of their experience or their qualification. And as we try to open out far and wide, we will try to restrict people to no more than 2 boards, so that we don't have one person on several boards all over the place, but that so that several people have an opportunity to contribute to the governing of the island, because boards and committees are part of the governing of the island, and we want as many people as possible to contribute. So that's something that we will be reviewing in this week. Thompson Forbes, one question, please.
Okay, so my one question, although I would have liked to, but my one question, in relation to the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary, it is something that is very new to the Tobago House of Assembly, very new to Tobago. So can you just highlight what is the structure of the Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary and its role and function in the Tobago space, please?
Thank you. Now, one of the reasons why an Office of the Deputy Chief Secretary has not been opened as yet is because MSU, which is Management Services Unit, which is a part of the public service operations in Tobago for matters like this, they are actively engaged in building out the structure of it. Now, think of it this way. There were times when the Office of the Chief Secretary was a standalone division. Mr. London at one point was Chief Secretary and did not hold any other portfolio within the THA. So it's not abnormal for a Chief Secretary or a Deputy Chief Secretary to not have another portfolio beside that of Deputy Chief Secretary or Chief Secretary. The law allows it. And so as soon as that structure is completed by MSU, and that's why we said that is something that will be done in this quarter. So you will get the structure, you will get where the office will be located, you will get all you'll get the full job descriptions and the things that you will be managing, which are very, very critical to Tobago's development, might I add. You will get all of that before the end of this quarter. So I don't want to preempt the work of MSU because they are actively doing that as we speak. Ms. Jackson?
Good afternoon again, Chief Secretary. Well, I'm going to go with just one question, and that one question is in regards to the list that you had promised prior to Christmas about details of expenditure prior to the election. What is the status of this? Because you said that you were going to make that list public.
Oh, no.
Thank you.
Right, yes. So if I hear you correctly, because you were sort of muffled, is you're asking about the list of those who benefited or who were paid from that $163 million in the gold rush in the lead up to the election. If I hear you correctly, yes, that list is ready. Yes, I have seen that list. Yes, I was supplied with a list of all those that were paid out of that bond financing money and the actual list of projects that were done or that were paid for. I did indicate earlier that auditing is happening, that we have completely assessed some of these projects already and a few more remaining. And we just want to complete that internally first before we make that public. I will also extend the response, although they did not ask this, by saying one of the requirements for the new procurement legislation is that contracts will now be placed online and publicly, in that anybody should be able to go online and see the contracts, the bidding process, who won the bid, how much they're being paid for the contract, and so on. And I already indicated that Tobago will be the first to do that because we will run ahead of the national mandate on that matter. So pretty soon, all of these things will be available online. So the average Tobagonian, not just the media who might send a paper to or email a list to, but the entire public will be able to be part and be able to scrutinize procurement processes, so that you yourself will be able to assess whether a project really costs the kind of money some people asking for, and so on. The public has to be part of the process too. Miss Elizabeth Williams, one question, please.
Okay, good afternoon again, Mr. Chief Secretary.
Good afternoon.
Just wanted to know, I know that you would not be able to go into great detail, but could you tell us some strong points following your meeting with the finance minister?
Oh, sure. Right, so in the meeting with the finance minister, number one, the finance minister admitted that they were not abiding by the law. So he didn't put up a defense, he didn't pretend that was not so. He was well aware that that was not so, and he understands fully that they're operating against the grain of the law. He also indicated that part of the challenge is a cash flow issue for Trinidad. However, we went on to discussing the fact that this is causing serious cash flow issues for Tobago, and the fact that the THA now has an enormous overdraft facility that is unsecured, and so the interest is extremely high. And so every time we do not receive monies on time or quarterly, it means you have to depend on the overdraft facility, which means you have to pay large sums of interest to the bank, and that's large sums of interest that we did not budget to spend. In other words, there isn't a line item in the budget, in any of the previous budgets, to treat with that. With the minister, we also spoke about the bond financing. One of the questions I asked was the question of what proposal did Tobago House of Assembly, or the former secretary with responsibility for finance, what proposals did he give to you concerning how we plan to pay down on the bond financing? It's not free money, it's money that has to be paid for, and that we have to pay back for very soon. And so we discussed that issue. I wouldn't tell you the answer that he gave. That was interesting, the justification that was given for the bond financing. However, we had an appreciation for the fact that maybe we need to begin looking at a sinking fund, begin looking at mechanisms to put aside monies to pay for that bond financing. And of course, we discuss the remaining sums from the bond financing and whether we would like to have that now or later down the road. So we discussed all of these issues. I can assure you it was a very professional meeting, that as much as the political philosophies of the Minister of Finance and his party are not what I share, or the new administration in the THA share, we had a professional meeting. Because at the end of the day, sometimes you just have to put aside idiosyncrasies and find ways to work together for the good of the people. So it was a cordial meeting, I will tell you that. And I think I mentioned it in some interview before, that he wasn't his usual grinchiest self. So we had a cordial meeting, and we look forward to some significant outcomes from that meeting. And Mr. Clayton Clark, our final journalist.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chief Secretary, and to all secretaries and assistant secretaries. Happy New Year. I know I missed my initial turn, but I hope I could ask my 3 questions. Today is 1 month since the party was sworn into office. What has been the feedback, Mr. Chief Secretary, from secretaries and assistant secretaries on their tenure in office so far? And what is your assessment of these secretaries and your assessment of your performance? You mentioned that you met with the Minister of Finance, also the Secretary of Health met with her counterpart, the Secretary of Finance. How has been the interactions with the respective secretaries and their counterparts in the central government? And my third question, with the impending opening of the ANR International Airport to international flights, and given the upgrade work currently taking place at the airport facility, would the airport be ready to accommodate those incoming, that initial, or the return of international flights to the island? Can you just give an update on the
no problem.
Done on the readiness?
All right, no problem. Let me start with your last question first, which is in our international airport and the state of the airport facilities and the upgrades there, and whether we are ready for international flights. Yes, we are ready for international flights. What we have there is not the very best, but as I indicated earlier on, drills were done, testing was done. We had the health, the medical professionals on the ground to review everything. We looked at the use of technology there at the airport to facilitate a smooth and quick transfer of tourists in and out through the airport. We looked at different scenarios, including what to do if someone shows up with signs and symptoms, and what to do if we have to quarantine an entire plane and all of that. All of those mechanisms were looked at. Due diligence was done, and we look forward to reopening tomorrow. And we are looking forward to bringing more international flights in within, of course, the confines of our health protocol, and ensuring that we are doing it safely, because we have to find a way to simultaneously reopen for business while at the same time remaining safe. At this point, it cannot be one or the other, because we arrive at some place someday where we realize the entire economy of Tobago cannot be repaired, and that cannot be allowed to happen. With the issue of the relationship between secretaries and respective line ministers, so far I have not received any ill report from any of those meetings or any of those engagements. We are professionals on this side, and we know how to be firm advocates for Tobago while remaining professional. And I don't suspect any hiccups will happen hereafter. I do suspect that we will have moments where we may have some upstarts from across the pond who might want to pass their place, and when that happens, we will just simply put them back in their place and continue the professional relationship. It is what it is. Tobago voted for an administration that throughout the campaign indicated that we will be very, very firm on protecting that which is Tobago, very firm on fighting for the ability to govern ourselves in a much more defined way. And these were not idle promises, but these were covenants that we made with you, the people. And we insist on keeping that. You can guarantee Tobago that you will have professional interface from your secretaries with ministers and or anybody representing central government. But you can also rest assured that you will continue to have very firm advocates for Tobago's rights so far as Act 40 of 1996, while we wait on something greater than that. And so far, in terms of feedback, I know secretaries, as they go into divisions, have received almost celebrity status treatment, and it shows that the workers were overjoyed and over happy to have certain things behind their backs and to embrace change and something that's new and refreshing. I have already cautioned my colleagues that this sort of celebrity treatment won't last for much longer, and it will wear off. And as feathers are ruffled and as disagreements happen, you know the dynamic that happened within divisions. But I assure you that all of my secretaries will remain respectful and willing to work with people within divisions I will not venture to give an assessment of performance to date. Today is only 1 month. And in the first month, what happens is a lot of assessing of situation, a lot of taking of reports and detailing what has transpired and what is to transpire and what is still in waiting and what needs to get done and so on. A lot of that happened over the past month, and that's one of the reasons why we came here anxious to roll out some important initiatives that we need to get going within the first quarter of 2022, because we are saying that that honeymoon phase has ended and we need to get to work, right? We will present those assessments and reports from what has transpired before to you. Some of these things will require legal attention, and in cases where they do require legal attention, you will not hear from me immediately, because I'm not here to score political points by busting a mark, right? We are here to correct the wrongs that happen, to continue the right things that happen, and to transform this island of Tobago. So the transformation has begun. Again, the list of deliverables is a lengthy list. We will provide you with a detailed checklist of these lists, and we will want you to tick off the things as they are done with us, so you could keep us on our toes. We will return at the end of the quarter with an assessment of what we were able to achieve and what we were not able to achieve, and hopefully this begins a new day for a new type of politics, where your leaders are accountable to you by way of sharing with you quite openly through our communications the things that we are getting done, how we're getting them done, how much they're costing, why we're having challenges with this. That's the kind of governance model that we campaigned for, and we are going to present it to you. Let me take this opportunity now, at the very end of this presser, did not realize that we had you for that long, to express thank you again to all of Tobago. Listen, Tobago, you are more than kind to us, and you came out and you did what many thought was not possible for you to do. We are humbled by your outpouring of support. We are humbled that you chose to vote for us in such overwhelming numbers. We are humbled that you have vested in us the care and the transformation of your government. And we will do all we can to not disappoint you. I understand and expect that mistakes will be made along the way, but rest assured that when mistakes are made, we will report them to you as we report the successes. And we will apologize for the mistakes as we just as much as we celebrate the successes, because we are in this together. This is about a people-focused kind of government. This is about people participating in our democracy. And you, the people of Tobago, you participated during the election, and we want you to continue participating with us all throughout our tenure. You must be here with us. We expect to hear from you, your commentary, your criticisms, your commendations. We expect to hear from you ideas, suggestions, and we will set up structures by which you can effortlessly make those known to us, so that we can consider them and we can move with them. The instruction is still the same to every area rep we have in this establishment, that you are required to remain on the ground in your district. If I, as Chief Secretary, could take my vehicle on a Sunday and find myself in Castara to just sit down and talk with people, then every secretary here can find the time to do the same. It's about having you, the people, at the center of every single thing we do. And that's why when we talk in deliverables, I could talk about the Murray family that's adversely affected up in Goodwood, and personalizing some of these development needs. I could talk about the bridging in Google Patch, because we don't want a development plan that is divorced from you, the people. And as I'm saying it, I forgot one major thing that I may not be, two major things that deliverables, so many. One was the Lekoto Community Center, which in this quarter we will have it available to the community for use. And the other is that consultations are going to start in this quarter for the rebuilding of the city, or for the building of the city of Scarborough. We'll start those consultations this quarter as well, because we don't have time to waste. So besides saying thank you, let me also indicate to you Happy New Year. I send greetings to you at the start of the new year, and we're just reiterating those greetings and urging you, let's work together for the good of Tobago. And perhaps I should end with one anecdote. I like to tell stories. When I entered my office across at Finance, I encountered some employees that were brought on as what we call political hires. And one of the first things I said to my administrator, I said, look, while I am entitled to hiring those who are going to be in my immediate circle and working closest with me, I don't want us to fire anybody. I want us to redeploy them. No, I can't say the same for everybody that was a political hire across the THA, because some were just collecting monies under false pretense, and that we will treat with. In fact, that we have treated with. But for the most part, we are trying our best to build out a Tobago where people are not dissected by red and black. The election is gone. Right now, it's about coming together and working together. I did notice your letter, Miss Assemblyman Morris, Minority Leader Morris. Mr. Morris, he could tell you that on the sitting we had in December, I think that was the 21st of December, I verbally asked him to meet. So he did not need to write me a letter. I asked him to meet since last year. And he indicated to me that he would not be available until January. So meeting with him was always something I had planned to do anyway. But I assure you that the Secretary of Health has already indicated to me that she's going to invite him to the COVID task force meeting, not as a permanent member of the task force, but as one of those that can contribute and listening to what the experts are saying at the very top of the year. And occasionally he'll be invited so that he will be abreast about what will happen concerning COVID. But we are about a different kind of government. I mean, even the breeze feel better right now. So rest assured that the challenges are there, but the challenges are surmountable. We can overcome them once we work together, once we put our shoulders to the wheel and keep working. So thank you very much, Tobago, again for this opportunity. Keep praying for us as you always have been doing. Keep the prayer and fast going. Call us on mornings and pray for us just as you did during the election. Meet us, send us your comments. It's difficult to get to all of them immediately, but we are making room to create a system where you can actively contribute in your own governance model. So thank you very much. Happy New Year again, and all the best for 2022.
What I go